Chapter 5. Exodus at dawn. The next morning, Elvira woke them and had them gather their things. Someone who was empathetic to their decision to leave had warned them that Holger would drive them out. Bard stuffed as many sunstones as possible onto Kai, and then hid them under their travel bags and supplies. Bard was reluctant to pack the instruments the way he did, as they would very much go out of tune in that weather, but it was what it was. As they finished, a horde of people began to assemble at the entrance to the village, some being kicked out. Likely they were those who would have joined who didn't need much or any healing. They had very little on them, but a few people threw them some blankets as a parting gift of sorts. Others shouted their grievances with betraying the chief. Their words made it seem like the old chief had finally met his end. Sen rushed inside and gathered the others, while Bard made sure the sunstones wouldn't be noticed. He wore the braces more openly today, and noted that Elvira had her band on her arm as well. With a heavy sigh, he signaled to the ones at the entrance to the yard, and they beckoned to the evicted residents. As the people ran over, seeking protection, Bard stayed off Kai so he could move more easily and his companion could be more intimidating. He ushered people into the yard where they reunited with others, and with Ruger and Elvira, and began to move out the horses that Ruger had. Bard was impressed with the line of laden beasts, and the supplies would be needed. Sen however still had a spot on Kai, so she climbed up and Holger with his men came at them. He wore the feathers on his head, signaling he was chief. Bard stepped forward, he drew his tokens out and had them hanging in his hand. "I should have known," Holger growled as he came within earshot. "When you oppress your own people, of course they will want to leave," Bard said with a frown. "These are my people, and now you want to guide them to their deaths," Holger shouted, and many in his group jeered and shouted in disgust. "The same people you have already condemned to death. What difference does it make to you if they die early?" Bard retorted. A person threw a snowball at him and smacked him in the face. "You dryad scum," voices shouted. "She's bewitched you," others shouted. Holger seemed to gloat as more insults were hurled at them. Some were quite unsavory. Then he held up his hand and the crowd hushed. "Just hand her over, and I'll free you from her control, and we can return back to normal." Holger pointed at Sen, and Bard bristled along with Kai. An arrow appeared at Holger's feet from over Bard's head, and he wheeled briefly. Bard looked back and smirked as he saw Sen with her bow in hand, resting with an arrow nocked, her hair floating and catching the sunlight. "If you insist, then the next one won't miss," she shouted. "I've already placed seed around this place. One wrong move, one action to stop us from leaving, and you'll find yourself surrounded by trees." This disrupted the people with Holger, and some retreated. The uniformity was lost, and Holger growled and rallied them to stand firm. "Just let us leave, and no one has to get hurt," Bard said finally. Some of Holger's own men were nearly saying to let them leave. Wives pled from the village's walls, and fathers seemed more and more reluctant. Bard held out his hand, his armband showing clearly as his forearms shifted out of the cloak. There were gasps and whispers, some of which Holger heard, and his expression darkened. "Thief!" someone shouted, and Bard began to let the tokens swing around. "Give those back. They belong to me. You didn't even know that the day I met with the chief, he gave them to me, and he gave the band to your sister, Elvira," Bard said, and Elvira stepped forward, letting the band glint in the light. Holger growled, but Kai howled, and that caused some of his men to stop him from charging forwards. At least he had some sensible people on his side. "These are my last words. If you don't agree with Holger being chief, then leave with us. I have ways to keep the shades away," Bard said loudly before ramping up the speed of his tokens, and their melody rang out. Elvira was a bit surprised at the sound, and Holger's people retreated, but some stepped forwards. Holger called them traitors, but they gathered there, and soon their families joined them, or those that were willing. Bard was once again saddened that families would be separated. He couldn't help but briefly recall his mother before parting, but that last memory was interrupted as Elvira gathered them together. Bard walked beside Kai and Sen stayed atop with her bow in hand. Bard continued to spin the tokens as they marched away. Those at the back had snow and rocks thrown at them by the spiteful. Kai was stuck stomping down the snow, so Ruger and Elvira helped to hurry them along. With a loud bang of Ruger's rifle, those who thought to give chase were scared off for a bit. Later, Some people with their own things rode on their horses after them. They came up to Bard and asked to join, unwilling to be separated from their family. Bard agreed, on the condition they didn't stir trouble, and, with their horses, they helped the less fortunate. They settled in on foot next to family members and loaded the horses before continuing the journey. Sen watched for any beasts that might come after them, or hostile humans, but for the most part they were out, alone in the white expanse of the plains. Night would be their testing ground.